r/Askreddit, how have you seen a person's life be ruined in a single day? I play poker. I once saw a man on my way in betting about 10K all on one roulette spin. He chose red, and lost. He looked defeated. Later that night, a guy at our table told us that he heard the guy on the phone crying in the parking lot trying to explain to his wife that he lost their money. She was screaming and said she wants a divorce. As a marriage counselor, I often see one confession from a partner absolutely ruin their partner's life, future, self-esteem. It's heartbreaking. We had extended family together for a holiday and everyone was making jokes about how my cousin was late. His mom and dad were involved in the jokes, texting him being upset about how he was late and all. Turns out, someone hit him in a head-on collision on his way over and he died on impact. The police knocked on the door to notify the family like a fudging movie. I'll never forget watching my aunt crumple to the ground. An 18-year-old tried to steal a couple bottles of Hennessy from my store. When I confronted him, he swung the bottle at my head and connected. I rolled with the blow so it didn't do much damage. Charged with butto and robbery by my company. Violent crimes offender and lost custody of his baby. When I was about 13, I was talking with my best friend at a playground on a hill. Suddenly this lady comes racing down on her bike. She's not wearing a helmet, which was unfortunate because her bike slipped from underneath her and she goes flying, smacks her head into a corner. I was too young to know this at the time, but I'm almost certain she died instantly. Wear a helmet. I was working in a bank. One day the director fired one of his executives. The whole "empty your desk, you're fired" speech in front of everyone. The director was furious and the guy seemed entirely destroyed. Then he explains to all that this guy gave his login and password to a friend in another branch. The friend used that login and others while doing some kind of credit card fraud. Police arrested her, but lacked evidence against the fired guy, so they just fired him on the spot. Obviously, besides losing his job, he was also blacklisted to work in banks or finance. A friend of mine got busted in a drug raid and was caught with half a minivan's worth of weed. My stepdad's life was ruined the day his son, my brother, died. He couldn't cope with the loss, couldn't comprehend the rest of us were hurting just as bad, and turned even deeper into the alcohol and became even more emotionally abusive. Couple years later, when he forced my mom to choose him or me, I watched her make the hardest decision I've probably ever seen her make. She walked away from her husband, the love of her life. My mother and I no longer have much of a relationship. She made the right choice for the wrong reason. She has point blank told me she regrets having me. My stepdad is, as far as I know, still drunk off his butt and living alone. My mother is alone and living with regrets. As for me, I'm still healing from the scars but mostly doing okay. A kid I went to school with and his sister died in a car crash. They were in the car behind the parents' car driving the older sister to her first year of college. Parents made a turn and no longer saw the kid's car behind them. I would say finding both your kids dead is up there. One of my friends was playing online with me when I hear a knock on his door through the mic. His parents walk in and decide to tell them that he is adopted and that they are getting a divorce, all in one go, no emotional breaks or anything, and my friend just breaks down over the mic as his parents walk out. I was part of a notification team that told a mother that her 20-year-old son had died. Watching her collapse, I know that her life would never be the same after that. One guy I knew found out that he was going to be a father on his graduation night. He was 17, and he looked absolutely destroyed. Yup, and I did it. Boss had and produced Kitty. It disturbed me so much I spoke with a friend who was a desk SGT the town over and asked what could be done. He butted word along to the chief of the town where it was happening. 2 days later the biggest cop I've ever seen walked through the door of our shop and asked to see everyone's id. Cuffed and stuffed. You should have seen his face when I was summoned to testify at the grand jury hearing. This whole thing has been sort of cleansing for me. I've never spoken about it to anyone other than my wife, who supported my decision to become a jobless college student with a family and mortgage. Thanks for the honest and kind words. I knew a guy who, within the same 24 hours, learned that his wife of 7 years was pregnant with someone else's child. His wife was filing for divorce, and she was going to try to get their house to herself because she was the primary signer on their mortgage because his credit wasn't so hot. That was brutal to see. Fudgin' A. My elderly father unwittingly married a woman who would abuse him for 4.5 years before we found out. We met her on the day of the wedding. That day sealed his fate. She isolated him from us, coerced him to sell his buttes, stripped his bank accounts, heavily drugged him and almost killed him, but we rescued him and he lived with us until he died. The guy from yesterday's Amit who lost both his parents in a car crash and then got fired from his job. I had a former colleague who was doing his residency in general surgery. He had just started his 5th and final year of training. One day, in the middle of a surgical case, the police show up at the hospital for him. A tech pulled him out of the OR, and he was arrested right there on the spot in front of everybody. Still in most of his surgical attire, he had to do the walk of shame through the entire hospital, in handcuffs and/or scrubs. Turns out his ex-wife had gone to the police claiming that he had molested their children. The children testified to this effect as well. All of us were blown away. This was the sweetest, most cheerful guy ever. Nobody thought him capable of something like this. Sure enough, it came out several months later that the kid's statements were coerced and that his ex-wife falsified the whole thing. It wasn't the first time she had attempted to screw him over, but it was definitely the most successful. Dude's career and life were fudged. This was back in junior high school. Dude sent his S to an 8-year-old, him being 12, and the school found out. The cops were involved and they pulled up to the school and he left in handcuffs. It also turned out that same 8-year-old that he sent S to, he beat her into a coma. Don't know what happened to him. Obviously he had some sort of butto and childography charges, but that's all I know. This was a few years ago. I work in a hospital, got notified a large trauma was coming in. A minivan got struck by a drunk driver with the grandpa, aunt and 3 kids under 10. The aunt survived. The kids came to my hospital, 1 dead on arrival and the other 2 we couldn't save, kept them on life support until the parents got there to say goodbye. I'm always going to remember the sound of the mom singing to them. She lost all her kids and her dad in 1 day. Had a closeted gay friend send a pic of him taking a embutive up his $1 to the wrong daddy on his phone. Chris Watts? Dude annihilated his entire family probably thinking he wouldn't get caught. If you ever have some free time, go on YouTube and watch the police officers' body cams working that case. One of the former anesthesiology residents in the program here was in his last CA3 year. He was emergency call, which comes after C1, C2 and C3 and basically never ever calls in, but you have to be available in the event that you do get called in. Most people will sleep with their phone on or go out to the movies or do basically anything within a 30 minutes drive of the hospital. Some crazy car accident happens that night around 2 a.m. and multiple trauma cases are going back into the OR. Our dude fell asleep and his iPhone did some automatic update so he didn't get the call from the hospital immediately. His pager battery also died sometime that evening. He doesn't realize any of this until he's getting ready for work the next day at around 5:45 a.m. and sees his phone blown up, shows up to work at 6, fired on the spot. Guy was 2 months away from graduation and starting salary of $400,000 a year plus overtime. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe and smack that bell icon to stay up to date on our videos. See you next time.